Okay, so I'm standing outside the Boston Globe. Actually, it's not where the newspaper is. It's an old newsstand that's now currently closed because, of course, the digital age, newspapers are having a tough time. About 2 years ago, they had some massive cuts to their staff in order to attempt to turn a modest profit. That's what the news report said. But the real reason why I'm talking about this is because in a free market, we need full information. We need access to information. The only way you have access to information, of course, is with a free press, and that's why that's one of the Constitution has to guarantee the right of free press, and that's important. Now, of course, the free press has not always been, and the right of free speech has not always been something that's inherent in every society and in every country. So, to talk about that, we'll end up probably somewhere in China, but before we do that, we're going to start by going back to Socrates in Athens. Let's go.
The whole concept of free speech and the freedom of religion goes back actually to Athens here. Think back to 399 BC or thereabouts in the trial of Socrates. And what we know about the trial of Socrates is that he was accused of two things. One was corrupting the youth, filling them with different ideas. So that's the concept of free speech that was being violated. They didn't have free speech. This was Athens, and by democracy, they did not vote free speech. The other thing that he was accused of was believing in gods other than the state-sanctioned or the city-sanctioned gods. So those are the two things that Socrates was accused of. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. He had to drink poisonous hemlock in order to essentially, they forced him to commit suicide, if you will. So when we think about our American rights of free speech and freedom of religion that are enshrined in our Constitution, that debate goes back to the earliest dawn of Western civilization, which took place right here in Athens.
Okay, here I am in the streets of Beijing, across the street from the China Daily Circulation. That's the name of it, I guess. What do I want to talk about? Freedom of the press. It's enshrined in our Constitution that we have the freedom of the press. And that means you can say a lot of things that you can't necessarily say in a country like China. You'll notice I'm speaking a little softly, although I doubt many people will understand me. But in America, we've come to appreciate a free press. And although most Americans don't take advantage of it, they get their news from one source, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC. But the reality is, you can flip the channel and you can hear the opposing side to any argument. In China, it's a state-run media, and you can't hear an opposing side. There are no alternatives. Most Chinese students never learn about the three T's. The three T's, of course, are Tibet, Taiwan, and Tiananmen. They know nothing of Tiananmen Square, most young kids in China. They don't realize what happened in 1989 with the protests. Most of them have never seen the infamous Tank Man photo. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, then as an American, then shame on both you and your history teachers from high school if they haven't taught this. This is an ingrained thing for us, the freedom of the press. We have that right, and not every country takes that for granted. Here, they often refer to their current president as Shibaba, which is basically his last name and Dada. And we don't think of our president in that way. It's a very different attitude, a very different implementation of information. And without information, a free society cannot make free choices. Here I am at Fleet Street, a name synonymous with news for the last 200 years. But now they give away the bit for free because no one's willing to buy it. Why? Because of the internet. Eventually these guys are going to go bankrupt, and should we bail them out? I think not. Because the business model that worked for 200 years, you buy for the news, no longer works. So now they got advertisers giving them revenue, as long as we're willing to pick up that newspaper. But soon the new generation isn't going to be willing to pick that up because it's easier to have the news right on their smartphone.
And what's going to happen to Fleet Street then? I don't know. They either make the transition to the internet, or Fleet Street just becomes another historical site to visit when you're in London.